Welcome back to the Explainer. Imagine a country that's rapidly deploying 5G networks, launching broadband satellites, and literally laying the groundwork for 6G. Now imagine trying to govern all of that cutting-edge technology with laws written before the airplane was even invented. Well, today we're unpacking exactly how India is completely rewiring its communication laws for the 21st century.
I mean, seriously, think about it for a second. How on earth do you govern modern satellite internet with a law that was written for telegraphs back in 1885? That real-world problem, trying to run a booming digital economy on colonial-era rules, is exactly why this massive legislative overhaul emerged. We desperately needed an upgrade, and well, that upgrade is finally here.
Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the digital governance transformation, the anatomy of the new bill, its strategic impacts, privacy challenges, the 2024 telecom rules, and wrap it all up with a quick final revision.
Let's kick things off with the digital governance transformation.
For literal decades, India's telecommunications were governed by the Indian Telegraph Act of 1885, the Wireless Telegraphy Act of 1933, and a 1950 Act about telegraph wires. It's kind of wild to think about. But now we are officially replacing those three archaic colonial-era acts with one consolidated modern framework, the Telecommunications Act of 2023. This is the ultimate before and after.
Moving right along to the anatomy of the Telecom Bill.
So the real meat of the issue here is how spectrum is distributed. You know, those invisible radio frequencies that make all wireless communication possible. Under the new law, while auctions remain the default method, the government has carved out an administrative route. What does that mean? It means for absolutely critical areas like defense, disaster management, and satellite services like DTH television, the government will allocate spectrum directly. This is a massive, game-changing shift because it sets the stage for global satellite players to enter the market without getting bogged down in endless bidding wars. Another major upgrade is how we handle disputes. To fix the notoriously slow legal bottlenecks of the past, the legislation introduces this highly structured, three-tiered online settlement system. It starts with an adjudicating officer, then it moves up to a designated committee of appeals, and it caps off with the Telecom Dispute Settlement and Appellate Tribunal, or TDSAT. The best part? It's designed to be completely digital to make sure disputes are resolved super efficiently. Then we have the Digital Bharat Nidhi. Okay, so previously, this was just a universal service fund meant for building basic telecom infrastructure in underserved rural areas. But now, its mandate has been completely expanded to directly fund research and development. This is a huge deal. It represents a massive financial push toward building long-term technological independence while still bridging that rural-urban digital divide.
Now let's pivot to the strategic impact and benefits.
What's really fascinating here is the delicate balancing act this legislation tries to pull off. On the economic side, you've got digitized bureaucratic procedures and total clarity for global satellite players, which is a huge win for the ease of doing business. But on the consumer protection side, the law now mandates strict biometric authentication to protect you from SIM card fraud. And perhaps most importantly, it explicitly stops short of over-regulating OTT streaming and chat platforms like Netflix or WhatsApp. By keeping them out of the strict telecom definition, the goal is to keep encouraging innovation.
But of course, we have to talk about the surveillance versus privacy challenges.
Let's look at the first major legal friction point. Critics are loudly waving a red flag about that new administrative allocation provision we just talked about, pointing out it might clash with a landmark 2012 Supreme Court ruling. Back during the 2G spectrum case, the court basically recommended that scarce natural resources should ideally be auctioned off. So, whether this new administrative shortcut actually holds up against that precedent, that is going to be a fascinating legal space to watch. And then there's the hidden challenge, the elephant in the room, surveillance versus privacy. The new law lets the government notify standards for encryption and, during public emergencies, gives the executive the power to intercept messages. This begs a massive, completely unavoidable question. Does this mandate empower the government to break popular chat apps' end-to-end encryption? It's sparking an intense, ongoing debate about how to protect citizen privacy while still ensuring national security.
It's also absolutely crucial to realize that the definitions of telecom services and messages in this act are incredibly broad. Many legal experts view these intentionally wide definitions as a potential gateway for executive overreach. They leave the door cracked open to potentially regulate online platforms or even take over networks entirely during national security events, maybe without sufficient checks and balances.
All right, let's see how this all plays out in reality with the 2024 telecom rules.
We can distill these three massive sets of 2024 rules into some very clear, actionable mandates. For temporary internet suspensions, there is now a strict 15-day maximum limit, and it requires a 24-hour review. For critical telecommunication infrastructure, companies literally have to appoint a chief telecommunication security officer. And for general cybersecurity, there's a whole new mobile number verification system established to aggressively root out fraudulent subscribers.
I want to zoom in on one specific wild number here: 6 hours. Under the critical telecommunication infrastructure rules, if a cyber incident occurs, entities have exactly this long, just 6 hours, to report it to the authorities. That tight window really showcases the government's aggressive new approach to national cyber defense. And this actually connects to a much larger trend you'll start noticing. The rules create a new category called Telecommunication Identifier User Entities. Basically, this means everyday platforms that rely on your mobile number for communication and authentication. Things Zomato, Uber, PhonePay, they are now legally recognized and brought under the broader telecom security framework. We've seen a remarkably rapid evolution from legislative theory to on-the-ground implementation. It all started with the bill passing in December 2023. By early 2024, the new suspension and cyber rules were already rolled out. Fast forward to October 2024, and regulations mandated the whitelisting of URLs to stop spam. And looking ahead to 2025, mandatory checks on a used equipment database will be enforced to tightly secure the nation's digital borders. Okay, time for our final revision and takeaways. Try to lock these 5 critical anchors into your memory, as they represent the fundamental architectural changes to India's digital infrastructure. First, we finally replaced the archaic 1885 Act. Second, we have dual spectrum allocation, using both auctions and administrative routes. Third, the Digital Bharat Nidhi is now a major fund for R&D. Fourth, a streamlined 3-tier digital dispute system is up and running. And fifth, strict 2024 cyber mandates, like that intense 6-hour reporting window, aggressively enforce security. I want to leave you with a real puzzle to chew on, to test your analytical thinking. How effectively do you think this new framework actually balances the ease of doing business and national security against the critical need for citizen privacy and the very real risk of executive overreach? Because honestly, that is the ultimate balancing act of modern digital governance. Thanks so much for joining us. Keep analyzing, and I'll see you in the next explainer.